Well, hello everybody, it's vanburman here, and I guess it's probably time for us, or me, actually, definitely me, to review Black Myth Wukong. Ooh, it tastes a bit strange. Anyway. Anyway, gourd for effect from the video game, of course. Apologies about that, my coconut water went a bit weird in the bottle. But yes, it is time to review Black Myth Wukong. I was meant to do this a lot earlier, actually, than I'm coming to it now, but I mean, I guess now's as good a time as any to do it, really. I think getting quite a way through Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and I wasn't really planning on doing Black Myth so soon after having done Stellar Blade. So, kind of, yeah, caught me a little bit by surprise, I suppose, in terms of actually going through and playing it. I'm actually glad I did it this way, because I've thoroughly enjoyed Black Myth Wukong, and that's the spoiler, and there you go. That's the TLDR. What else do I have to say? Probably the only other thing I have to say is the following video is dedicated to my good friend Dave, who may well be watching, or may watch at some point in the future. So, yeah, this one is for you. Not for any particular reason, just not because he's a big fan of Journey to the West, but regardless, there we are. Maybe you will be one day. Right, so Black Myth Wukong is a Souls-like action boss rush kind of game based on the novel Journey. Would you call it a novel? I'm going to call it a novel for now. Journey to the West, which is one of the big Chinese literaturally important bits. Like Three Kingdoms, like the Romance of Three Kingdoms, basically. And effectively, it is about a young, well, I suppose he's not young in the end, is he? But a monkey called Sun Wukong, who becomes very powerful. And he has the ability to transform and to freeze people in position and to get on his somersault cloud and fly around. And he has a staff that he can make big or small at will, which is why when he has his staff, he can make it really small, like a strand of hair, and stick it. Does he put it in his ear? I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, he can make it really small, really big, and yeah, it becomes he's very formidable. So formidable that he ends up taking on effectively heaven and the Buddhas. And yeah, we kind of come to the game right at the end of the final kind of what's meant to be the showdown, and unfortunately, due to people tricking Sun Wukong, he is unceremoniously cast down and effectively dies. So you kind of take the role of his spiritual successor, I suppose. And the idea is that we're going through the adventures that kind of mirror the same one that Sun Wukong went through on his journey to the West, in order to be able to claim back the essence of Sun Wukong, and you can potentially discover that story in its entirety, although we'll get onto that in a bit in more detail, and yeah, effectively reclaim the skills and abilities that made Sun Wukong so powerful in your new form. So yeah, hopefully that gives a bit more context, because I realised that, and I have realised a lot since playing the game, unless you know the story, unless you've read not necessarily read the novel, but maybe experienced some of the more traditional media around it, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense of them being like a really cool action game where you play as a monkey with a big staff and have magical abilities and all that kind of thing. So once you read around it a bit more, it gives a lot more context, and I think that always adds quite a bit of flavour, and I'm not sure if I would say that it's a prerequisite. I come to it after playing the game, and I appreciate the game and the story more as a consequence. So kind of doesn't really matter, whatever sort of way you want to take to it. But yeah, the story and stuff, like, absolutely brilliant. Not sort of read or had or seen anything from Journey to the West before, so it's kind of interesting coming to it a bit later on. And yeah, I think it's really good. I think that's the thing. The game can be really particularly challenging, and I think that might put some players off. It takes a certain amount of tenacity, which maybe Dark Souls-ish type of players or people who've completed Stellar Blade, because I think that did set me up quite well for Black Myth Wukong, will be, you know, well equipped in order to be able to take on the challenge of Black Myth Wukong, because it is challenging in its own way. And I've unfortunately read lots of like Reddit posts and videos of people having quit it at certain there's certain like skill checkpoints throughout the game, basically, is the simplest way I can put it. And if you get stuck on that and you're banging your head against a brick wall and you can't find a way through, then it is going to feel as though it's impassable. And I got one of the bosses that took me the most tries to beat, actually, is one of those skill checks that's very early on. You hardly really see any of the game or experience any of the story by that point. And kind of without that, you don't face a boss that is that difficult for much longer afterwards as well. So some of you might be thinking, oh, that sounds great, I can't wait to go and challenge that particular boss and those bosses throughout the game. But other people will be like, does that mean I'm going to spend 40-ish pounds on a game and then not be able to get past the first chapter? Maybe, right? So, I mean, it's probably not so bad if you're on console and you can go and trade the game in and get something else, but if it's on PC, you were kind of stuck, because I'd say it definitely would take more than 2 hours to get to that first critical mass point, I suppose. And yeah, so I'm going to touch on those things throughout the review, giving you the TLDR, and I think, yeah, it's just have to see what you think in regards to the game as an entirety, to show you some of the footage and that kind of thing. But the game's been out quite a while now, so you may already probably know, but doing this for me, because finished it and really, well, not necessarily, don't have to always really enjoy it to do a review, but there you go. By the way, the reason there was a cut right at the start, and I don't really like to do cuts if I can help it, but I bought this gourd because I thought it would be cool, and it is cool, right? It's getting everywhere. It's got like a little stopper cap and a little metal thing, which I know metal can change the taste of drinks and stuff. But I put some coconut water in here because in the game, and traditionally it's a coconut kind of wine, but it tastes real funky, and it's been there a couple of days, and I think, because I meant to do this video a couple of days ago, so I think maybe that's why. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe a decorative gourd only. I think that's probably what I'll use it for afterwards, but very cool. So yeah, put that down now, can't I? So without further ado, let's get into the review.
So the first thing I really want to touch on is just how beautiful the game really is. Now, all the settings for all of this recording is on the cinematic preset, which is the highest, like above ultra, I think, if there is an ultra, with full ray tracing as well. Now, I didn't get 60 FPS, and I had to use some the DLSS, like the 90% one, where it's DLSS anti-aliasing. But if you have a powerful enough GPU, this one is running on a 4090, then it looks absolutely incredible. I will say though, I have also played it on a 3080, a 1080 Ti, and if you adjust your expectations and down upscale as appropriate, then it can also look really good there as well. I don't think it necessarily needs the ray tracing to look good. It looks good anyway. The textures are obviously clearly very high quality, and all the animations and stuff, although I'll do touch on this a little bit later, are really first class, and a lot of love has gone into just even the really small details. It's not the only game to have ever done that, of course, but this game does it particularly well. So I also want to take this opportunity to run through some of the other abilities and stuff. So you've got two main trees. So you've got your stance tree, which allows you to have your basic abilities, and also your three stances: smash, pillar, and thrust. For my playthrough, I almost only exclusively used smash stance. But the really nice bit about it is you can reallocate your what are called sparks, your level up allocation points, whenever you get to a shrine, effectively. So you can really play around with the abilities as you unlock more of the spells, the transformations, that kind of thing. Which means if you come against a really tough boss and you have enough sparks, you can potentially play in a different style that might be better suited. And then we have these spirits, which are like the different kinds of transformations, like one-hit transformations, and they all have various buffs. They generally do an attack. Not all of them do an attack. Some of them do give you a buff, and lots of them are pretty cool. Many of them are very gimmicky. I think if you were playing this to be efficient, there's probably only a couple that you would use. I used the frog guy for far too long, if I'm perfectly honest. So, yes. So next thing, moving to some combat. Now the combat can be a little bit cheesy, I guess, if you like, when you're just fighting your regular Yao Guais. And one of the bits that I found worked pretty well, not necessarily against one of these types of enemies, but like the general enemies, is just to charge up my smash stance as I'm running up to them, and then deliver them a 3-hit or a 3-focus point smash stance right off the bat, which for the good amount of enemies will take them down in one hit. Not so much the later ones or the much bigger enemies, but yeah, there's a really good variety of Yao Guai. There's not really any. I'm trying to think of, like, from area to area, or chapter to chapter, I suppose, if there's any that are repeated. Don't actually think that there are, and a lot of them can be fairly challenging. They all have, so this guy, for example, has the blue, like, flame almost. So that is to basically mark that Yao Guai as being an elite Yao Guai. You then get to absorb their spirit, and then you can transform into them for that one-hit scenario spirit type thing, and they all do different things. Generally they'll do a move that particular Yao Guai does. So for that guy, I think he runs around and spins and you shoot some fire out of his knees. And then we have, like, probably one of the less good bits, although this is not really unique to Black Myth Wukong per se, but really big enemies are quite annoying to fight. And look, there's not too many of them, and don't get me wrong, very impressive, very intimidating to come up against them in general gameplay, right? But yeah, in terms of hitting them, and it's the same with bosses as well, to be fair, generally you will have a much better time against enemies that are similar size to some Wukong, effectively. The bigger guys need a bit more finessing, and the lock-on doesn't always work. You have to switch in and out of lock-on. Cameras don't help so much. But I must say, like, that's probably the only real time where I found that the camera angles were not really in your favour, and also when bosses are sort of teleporting around, that can also give you that same kind of feeling as though you're kind of being a little bit left behind by the camera, so to speak. But, you know, with enough perseverance and small amounts of mastery of the free camera, if you can get some Wukong relative to where you want him to be, then yeah, you can get through it. It's more of an annoyance than an absolute showstopper. I think the really good thing, or interesting thing, I suppose, about the game is that it does prioritize having a very what's what I'm looking for? Having a very fluid, like almost like a gun-ho kind of stance, like constant attack, tends to be the way that will give you the most satisfaction with bosses. Not all the time. There are some, I guess, like you call them gimmick bosses, right? Or bosses that need a particular strategy, some you have to wait for, that kind of thing. In this particular cutscene, actually, you get a slightly different approach if you go in as the wolf, because it's kind of like one of the stories that you learn throughout. I won't spoil it, but yeah, it's just worth noting. And unfortunately, it's interesting that I attracted one of the mobs from outside, and he's coming in trying to effectively lightning me in the cutscene. You know, like, the game is not immune to all of that, but this is like very Sun Wukong-esque. If you know the story, you know, he likes to be a little bit of a prankster, although, to be fair, in this game, the Sun Wukong that you play is like infinitely more serious than how Sun Wukong is interpreted in other media. And I guess that's right, isn't it, for this type of game, the type of setting, bit more gritty, bit more serious, but still, I can't knock it. Like, I think it's a really good way of, you know, telling things as Sun Wukong's successor, right? Sun Wukong would definitely have chatted a lot more and given a lot more like verbal beatdown, I think, or at least, you know, talk down to his opponents. But you can do that in your battles. So this guy, for example, very much immune to magic attacks, and I did want to show like a full boss fight in this video. I am planning on doing all the bosses that I've got recorded in like a boss rush type of video, which I'll do before I delete all my footage. But yeah, I just thought that give you a good example of what kind of thing you can expect, I suppose. Like, it's quite interesting that some bosses and their unique abilities or unique resistances, I suppose, only tend to come up a few times, really. There's a boss quite early on in the game that is a two-phased one, which I talk about later on, and you don't really tend to get that many two-phased bosses until much later. So, you know, you kind of see these things go away for a while and then come back, and generally the closer you get to the end, the more kind of immune they are to your magic and stuff, which does force you to play a bit different. And I don't think, like, there's lots of ways you can cheese bosses, and, you know, and sort of a lot of the time it almost comes down to a little bit of timing and a little bit of luck, using your immobilize at the exact right time before a boss is going to deliver a chain of attacks, and that kind of thing can really give you the edge, which actually happened in this fight a few times, to be honest, and that was my first time fighting him. But, you know, in another run, if I want to fight and fight him again right now with that exact same build, I may not have used my immobilize at the right time and made the boss fight a lot more difficult. So I think it's just a matter of sort of almost how it goes. You kind of have to almost suck it and see, right? And just know that, you know, there is going to be that like run-to-run variance in your fights and all the rest of it. And speaking like thematically, I suppose, I don't have any issue at all with the idea of being a little bit cheesy and a little bit kind of almost setting yourself up in the exact right way to deal with the boss that you're coming up against. I mean, it's so in keeping with the character of Sun Wukong that, you know, I really do appreciate that. This is one of the like Undercroft areas where you fight a lot of insects. And it's quite interesting actually, because I get to do my little transform into the same thing that is the enemy, or no, it's not quite the same one as you. It's an upgraded version of what I'm fighting. But, you know, we do get to a point where the standard enemies are a pain, and, you know, the game is particularly challenging at the various points until you learn really that kind of pattern as to how the enemies are progressing. So I'm just going to be quiet for this bit, and we're just going to watch a little bit of a cutscene, because I think it helps.
You seem smart.
Set it.
Why don't you take a chance inside?
Maybe that wasn't the best one to shut up for. But nevertheless, you have these interactions throughout the world that kind of blend in really well with your general gameplay. And this particular one, there's the lady there who shuts up those, well, you'll find out if you play it, but very annoying lanterns. And there's a load of chests just through that gate there. And obviously, it's a little bit suspicious that there's so many there just ripe to be opened. Now, at this point, I wasn't prepared to open them. I wanted to go and explore what was further down first. But I won't spoil any surprises, actually. You have to find out for yourself if they're okay to open. And this is one of the, like, I guess they're kind of optional bosses. They're not mission-critical bosses, but ones that you all just sort of, I guess you'd call them like overworld bosses. They just exist. They're just there in the same way that, like, a normal Yao Guai would be hanging around. And you have lots of opportunities to take these ones down, and you can find them in the most weird nooks and crannies of levels. So I decided to include this one as well, just as in not, I suppose the other one was optional as well, to be fair. but still had a lot more of like a story element, was definitely part of the side quest. This one just, I believe, anyway, just like exists out in the world. But when you get yourself, when you're confident in your ability and you press on with the attack, you can see quite how easy what may well be, because I think he's a poison-based boss, how tricky someone like that can then be made to be a lot easier.
Up this time. Suck your offerings and don't breed more rats. If you dare to muck up the king's practice again, I'll serve your dimwit son up for supper, myself. Ain't you that old loser? Where'd you come from, you bird-faced mug? Who cares anyway? I'll gobble you up first.
So the voice acting and I don't know, everything's got so much care in it with the, like say, even the voice acting and animations, and I mentioned that a few times now, but very, very impressive. I did put this bit in because it was, there's some reason the snow area really played havoc with my game and the graphics, even did it in the cutscene as well. This is a very highly optional bit of the game, so don't draw any conclusions from this, or try not to draw too many conclusions from what's going on at the minute. But I guess I just wanted to show that, you know, things aren't perfect, and just, you know, you've got that really nice animation there of the snow coming off the spear, and then you've got the rest of the textures glitching. I don't know if I actually managed to solve the problem or not, but it was quite, like I say, quite prevalent in the snow area. Something wrong with that particular texture for me, but it was repeatable, so it wasn't a case of to be fair, I haven't checked to see if other people are having the same issue, but still, I guess just worth noting, as with all things, there will be the occasional little glitches, but yeah. And finally, before we get on to the conclusion, just wanted to put a little bit of kind of like very much end game fight kind of thing that you can kind of expect to come up against. This was actually from my successful run, which once again I will put in my boss rush video, but yeah, just quite interesting. You can also have the damage counter on as well, which I hadn't worked out until this particular point in the game, but it's quite nice to see, because I was trying to really focus on getting critical hits, so it's nice to try and work out where you're likely to get critical hits and what it feels like in gameplay. Just depends how serious you want to take it, I suppose. But anyway, just a bit of a feel, and yeah, I think we'll get to the conclusion in just a second.
So, there you have Black Myth Wukong, and now I have the unenviable task of trying to score it fairly where it fits in that makes sense appropriately. I think it's very, very difficult, because having got into more of the lore and that kind of aspect of it, and really understanding the motivations for Sun Wukong and why he faces this battle with heaven that he does. Try not to go into any spoilers. I didn't know at the start either, so I'm going to keep that there. But yeah, I think the game, if I'm perfectly honest, and I didn't go through and read all the stuff in the, you know, all the like written diary entries, but journal entries and that kind of thing. I read some of them on some of the characters and things, quite interesting, and a lot of the artwork is really cool as well. I don't necessarily think throughout the gameplay it does a good enough job of telling you exactly about the story. It kind of does, but cryptic. It almost expects you to already understand the story of Journey to the West, and if you do, then you probably get more out of it. But trying to review it, and I guess I'm reviewing it for me, I kind of almost have two scores. I have my first score, which is before I understood the lore and appreciated it a bit more, and then afterwards, and the one before is obviously slightly lower than the one after. So I'm kind of more, and we're talking 1 or 2 points, but it makes a big difference when I'm thinking about my lists and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of like an 89, 90 before, and then it's kind of like a 91 after. So yeah, it runs really close, and it actually butts up very close to Dragon's Dogma 2 from last year. I think I'm still very much of the opinion that I did prefer Dragon's Dogma 2 more as a game and as an experience, because I'm not really into that boss rush kind of style of game, Souls-like games necessarily. I know having mentioned played Stellar Blade and all that, and thoroughly enjoyed that as well. I don't feel like I need to go into another one of those games now straight away, even though there are new releases that look interesting, but the same sort of thing. So yeah, so I think I'm probably going to stick with probably whatever is a point under Dragon's Dogma 2, and I can't remember if that's 90 or 91, but in any case, it is an absolutely fantastic game. It will require a certain base level of competence in order to be able to pick up that kind of... Is it kind of Devil... I use this like Devil May Cry thing, like hack and slash, but Souls-like is kind of where it fits in. So yeah, you know, there's going to be, you have to be up for wanting to do a challenge, potentially fighting the same boss 10, 20, 30 times. But there is always, and this might be the same in, I've not really played many of the Dark Souls games, but since the very first one, but you can take the opportunity to go and level up, increase your skills. And that does very often give you the edge. So I was kind of pretty much there or thereabouts the kind of recommended level for fighting the bosses as I went through the game. I think I probably had the maybe typical experience of going through the game, but you know, there are some people that have been like level 100 after chapter 3 and that kind of thing, you know, because they got stuck and went and did some grinding, leveled up, increased their skills, that kind of thing. So if you're willing to put the time in, you can eventually like brute force your way through the game. And when you start doing a new game plus and that kind of thing, or you go back because it gives you the option to go and fight any of the bosses that you fought previously, you can absolutely do that. You know, you can go back, play them on the original game's difficulty, and you will just brute force through them quite comfortably, really. One or two is still a bit tricky, obviously, but that's just the way it goes. And having beaten every single boss in the game, even the optional ones and the secret boss as well, I can say that there are some really big challenges in there, and it does feel very rewarding when you win in a way that I perhaps didn't feel when I played Stellar Blade. And I know the two may not be a very good comparison, but they're the most close in proximity for me, so they're the ones I'm going to draw upon. And you know, many times where you just eke out that victory and you're like, yeah, you know, like doing that at my desk, and I'm usually I am actually a very subdued individual, so for me to like have any sort of physical reaction to an accomplishment in a game is very rare, I would suggest. No, it is. It's rare, very rare. So that element was surprising for me, I must say, mainly because you don't think, I don't want to have to fight this boss again. You know, even if it's only the second or third time that you're fighting it, you know, you can go through that. You go through all those emotions, don't you, of doubt of whether you can beat this boss, whether you can learn the patterns, and you get there in the end one way or another, by hook or by crook. And yeah, I think Sun Wukong in the TV series, which is what I've been watching, which is I can't remember what it is now, CCTV. So it's one of the Chinese TV channels. All the episodes are on YouTube, by the way, with English subtitles. It was made in 1986, I think it was, something like that. So it's quite dated, and some of the green screen stuff is quite funky, but if you want to play the game, or you have played the game, or you're interested in the story of Journey to the West at all, I would recommend going and watching that, whether you have the context of the game or not, because it's really interesting to get that story, and you have to be prepared for a little bit of jank in the storytelling, and you have to also be one of the people that is happy watching film or TV with subtitles, which is not a problem for me, my preference actually, usually. So yeah, and I found it really enjoyable having played the game previously, because you get to episodes where you're like, I know the motivations of the final boss of this particular chapter. Like, I know what they're like, I know how they're scheming, and then to see it play out it sort of closes the circle on understanding the whole story of Sun Wukong. However, I will say, you could probably watch the first 5 or 6 episodes, and that kind of gives you all the background that you need to understand the game itself. I realise I've gone through gone a very long way and gone through all that before now I finally have to say that I think the game is absolutely beautiful. Runs very poorly at the highest settings, but runs more than adequately enough with the upscaling and stuff like that to work on most systems. I'm kind of trying to be like diplomatic here because I have played it on a GTX 1080 Ti, which, yeah, okay, really old, but I'm sure there's still plenty of people rocking a 1060, 1660 and that kind of stuff, or those kind of era and power of cards, where you might be thinking, God, I'd love to have 1080 Ti to play Black Myth Wukong on. So yeah, I've not tried it on anything lower than that, like a 1070 or anything like that, because I don't have my 1070 anymore. But I imagine, no, it was okay on the Steam Deck. You know, I beat bosses on the Steam Deck. I beat bosses on my downstairs TV, which is effectively just for just a living room TV. Beat it on my test bench. Beat some bosses on my test bench computer as well. So it's certainly possible to do it on lower hardware, but in order to like really appreciate the ambience and the setting and basically the use of I think it's Unreal Engine 5 that they use in it. If I'm wrong, apologies, but yeah, it just looks absolutely incredible. It looks very much like the UE5 tech demo that I remember watching a very long time ago. So one of them. The motion capture is incredible. The action's really good. The combo is really good. Story is, well, based off of a very successful story anyway, so you'd expect it to be good. And yeah, they've put in a lot of stuff for your New Game Plus as well, and challenges and challenge runs and that kind of thing to add some more longevity to the game than just being the story. So I can't really say that I really have any issues with it. I think there are some stuff where, unless you have a guide and things like that, it can be quite difficult to find the secret stuff. And I'll be honest, when I thought I might be missing a secret thing, I did go and check a guide to find out how to get started, how to take the first crumb of the path to do that, to get to that secret area or to that secret boss or whatever, what have you. But I don't personally have a problem with that. Maybe some people do, but for me, it's fine. I value my time, basically. So yeah, not going to run around, scratching around for ages trying to find the thread of how to pick up on getting to the secret area. And then you've got this kind of really weird... So I'm going to talk about some negatives now. And I've realised I've waited right till the end of this video to do this. But there are negatives. It's not perfect. The game is very linear, but feels open world. And then at some points it's like, we're open world where we want you to go, but don't go like that. Even though we've sort of given you breadcrumbs that or inclinations, I guess, that like going through a path that looks like this is the right way to go, or it will lead you to something interesting. And then you try it again, literally in the next area, and that's not the right way. It's an invisible wall. And then you find stuff early on where you can't take full damage, or you can't fall off things. And then all of a sudden you go to another area where you can fall off things. And I think the game is not very consistent in that approach, or has a kind of good enough in-game reason as to why that kind of stuff's happening. And that was, I guess, particularly annoying for me, because it done such a good job up till the points where it started doing that. I think one of the areas, I can't remember, chapter 4, I think it might be chapter 4. Is it chapter 4? Chapter 3? Doesn't matter anyway, but the bit where you can fall off and it introduces new mechanics that makes the sort of exploration quite difficult and challenging. I think that is okay, but it kind of also then unfortunately ends up feeling a bit unfair. I think it's different when the game has the mechanics and everything that's available to you and plays like an honest game back and forth with you. But all of a sudden, flipping and changing the rules did feel really unfair, and that was probably the section of the game that I enjoyed the least. And probably also one of those bits in the game where you'll face that kind of skill check again as to whether you do actually then go on and play the rest of the game. So yeah, it's not perfect. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. For the most part, it's very fair and consistent, but it does this stuff sometimes that just don't really make much sense compared to what it's taught you previously. So yeah, I would probably say that's kind of my biggest gripes with the game itself, and also these kind of arbitrary increase in difficulty. And then the last chapter, you would think would be really cool because you get access to a whole new way of travelling around, and it does it really badly, and it's very disappointing because it could have been so cool, particularly when you watch the TV series and you see how it's used in, obviously, an interpretation of the novel, but how it's used in the actual story. And it kind of just falls a little bit flat. I mean, it's okay because you got to that point, and the fights are still interesting, and some of them still have interesting gimmicks or ways of, you know, going about the combat. But yeah, it just, I don't know, how much should I say. So basically, you get the Somersault Cloud, and you can travel around the open world bit that is the last area, and nothing really renders in until you come off your cloud, effectively, like even just the boss, the like random enemies that just kind of appear, really, rather than being there, which they're just kind of being there in the other levels. All the numerous bosses that are in this open world, apart from one or two of them, aren't actually there unless you dismount, effectively. There's no on-cloud combat or any fights that utilise that new ability either. And it feels like such a waste. It almost, I tell you, almost feels as though spent so much time on some of the other sections, they got to that last bit and said, we need to finish it now. We can cut out this and that. Which is a real shame, because I think you could have added, it could have added some extra bits there. And I think it's so disappointing in some ways, because it's so close to being like a mid 9.5 out of 10, like really good, absolute, should be game of the year. I think compared to some of the other games that it was up against in 2024, it probably should have been game of the year. But I don't expect people to have the same fondness for Dragon's Dogma that I do. It's a bit of a niche outlier a little bit, even though it's obviously definitely a mainstream game as it being produced by Capcom. But yeah, with this one, you know, Game Science, never heard of them before, must admit. And yeah, they've released an absolutely incredible experience. So I'm not saying let any of this put you off, but I guess just be wary. It's definitely not a near perfect experience, but it is a fantastic game. And quite clearly a huge amount of care and love has gone into it. And people who, care very much about the story. Maybe it's just for the Western audience rather than the Eastern audience, I suppose, slightly pitched at the wrong level. And then there's obviously those gameplay mechanics and stuff that I'm not going to make any excuses for that. It's just not very good. Yeah. But there you go. So I hope you enjoyed the video. And I've waffled on as always. But yeah, if you do watch these, you know what you're going to get. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed it. I'll see you all very soon on the next one, which is more than likely going to be the Kingdom Come 2 review, because I'm getting very close, I believe, to the end of that one. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now. See you very soon.